It's showtime, folks. Enjoy the show.
And a fine Saturday morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Andrew.
We're all playing each other's roles on the show today.
Yes, we are. It's a little musical chairs Saturday matinee this morning.
How have things been? How have movie things been? I know you've been distraught at the fact that you've been unable to catch up with everybody.
Oh my gosh. It's just like everybody's watching like thousands of things. Well, it's great because we've got so many new, members in our Discord chat, but they're bringing like these long lists. Well, the Swedes have taken over. They've just overrun the channel, which is great. I love that. But yeah, there's so many great films that are just on my list, and then things get mentioned, and I'm like, I'm meaning to get that. Oh, it's not on Netflix anymore. So now I'm kicking myself because I've saved things, and then I just never get around to them, counting on the fact that some of these smaller films I just figure will always be there on Netflix, and they're not. So now I've got to reconfigure and reprioritize and start questioning those things that I keep putting off because they're those challenging views where you've got to be in the right mindset, and I just keep pushing them off. I've got to start blocking out time saying, no, I'm going to sit down and watch this, all in one take movie just because I need to get it done and I want to see it. So
it's very challenging to try to complete everything. That's why I have so many lists on Letterboxd. I'm trying to get through them all, but I feel like some of them are going to be lifetime challenges, but we'll see.
We will see.
We'll just have to see. Because not only do you have the lists, then you also have, just all the other things that people throw your way. It's like, oh, well, I want to see that now, too. Like Heidi over on Discord mentioned some films that she saw at Fantastic Fest. And I'm like, oh, that Argentine film sounds amazing. I have to put that on my list. And then these two films about the massacre in on the island in Norway. It's like, those sound great. I have to watch those. And
oh, yeah. Yeah.
So many movies to watch.
And I honestly, I got lazy because I just coasted through the Apes series. I felt no urgency to actually watching those films again. So I just let things go. And the next thing I knew, you're in the 1968 series. And I thought, oh, wait, these are films that I haven't seen. I need to see these. I need to get caught up. And all of a sudden I'm now several behind, so I've got some catching up to do. So you
got to catch up those crime films.
Yes, yeah, no, I had not heard of any of these, and as Pete told me last week, I should probably watch 75% of them. But
I would agree.
Well, he said 67%. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's one to not get as invested in, but I think that these are at least 3 of the 4 are ones that I, definitely need to prioritize now. So it's the great thing about lists. You can jump between lists, if you have 3 or 4 lists going on, you can say, well, it's like pulling from a fancy menu. I'm going to take one from category A and one from category B and one from category C, and I'll have a nice little meal.
Absolutely. And that's like me playing catch up with the Trailer Rewind movies.
Yes.
Because I missed a few and I'm like, oh man, I still have to go back and watch those. And then I'm doing a show with you later this month. I'm like, well, I got to watch that one first before I watch these others, just in case I run out of time.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, I saw that you watched it. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you about that for our October Trailer Rewind. I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion.
That will be raw, everybody. So it's on Netflix here in the States. So check it out.
Yes.
And be ready for this month's Trailer Rewind.
Yes. All right.
Oh my goodness. That's all I can say about that one right now.
It felt like the perfect timing for October. So I just
right.
Yes. All right. Have you
hungry? Yeah. Here's a finger.
Well, have you? Okay. I haven't been getting out to see anything, but now looking at all the trailers coming out, I'm getting really amped up for what's coming down the road this fall. There's lots of really good stuff. It seems like there was like a trailer lull, and now like this week it seems like every other day there's something new coming out for like Oscar season, and there's just more and more great films coming out towards the end of this year. So
it's been crazy, the number of trailers that look amazing, and some of them are films that are still coming out this year. I guess that they just didn't have the big budgets to put into the marketing, and i.e. they haven't been marketing and screaming at us for 6 months. These are the ones that are like, we've got 2 to 4 weeks to
Yes.
really put into the marketing for this one. So we'll start now and get people out. And I feel like there's a lot of those hitting right now because I feel like, man, I hadn't even heard of that, and I want to go see that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been quite a time for all of these trailers to hit.
Well, that seems like a perfect lead into your trailer pick for this week.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it does. So my trailer this week is a film that, again, as we just said, I hadn't even heard of. This is a film called Tiger that is coming out later this year. It's coming out November 2nd here in the U.S. I believe it's a limited release, U.S. and Canada. And then it has a nationwide release after that, but I don't know exactly when that is. But this is a sports drama. It's a boxing film directed by Alistair Grierson. And it is a true story, based on a true story about a boxer named Pardeep Nagra, who's a Sikh, and he wanted to be a boxer and ran up against the boxing federation because they wouldn't let him box because he wouldn't shave his beard off due to his religious beliefs. Mickey Rourke is in the film. He's playing Pardeep's mentor, and Pardeep is played by Prem Singh. And, this was a trailer I watched, and I had not heard this story at all, but I found it so fascinating. And this is one of those things where I feel like it's this rule that's in boxing about you have to be clean shaven in order to box, but it's a rule that people are like, well, why do we need that rule? It's kind of a rule that might be out of date nowadays. But everybody starts sticking to their guns about keeping the rule because there's a little, racial profiling and all of that stuff going on. And it sounds so fascinating. The Mickey Rourke factor always to me is still like, is that going to make this a better film or is it going to make it a worse film? I don't know. I'm not sure what to think of this one, but because it may just be kind of a rent it, not quite passing the 6 stars on the IMDb scale sort of movie. But as it stands right now, I am really fascinated by this story, and just the story alone gives me reason to want to watch this film. What did you think of it?
Yeah, this is the perfect trailer rewind pick because this is one that will get marketed on Mickey Rourke's name, try to pull some bodies into seats, but ultimately is probably going to find its audience on, streaming services and once it's available, online and digital and all of that. Because to me, it is a really compelling story. I love these true stories about things that, had no idea this was even and something that happened was a controversy. I'm not into boxing. So, and again, this I think is was something that happened he was in Canada. So I don't know how much attention he got here in the States, but it's a really interesting, look at something that is a topic that can flow into other areas of discussion when you've got, old rules and you've got people pushing against those rules. And then you get, sort of political issues that come into play, for me, makes this a really compelling and interesting story. So it's one that, I'm not probably going to rush out to theaters to see it, but it's one that when it shows up on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, I'm going to add it to my list and sit down and watch it one afternoon and hopefully have a really good time looking at something that's tackling a really interesting subject.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It definitely piqued my curiosity, so I'm glad it did the same for you. What's just an interesting production aside for this one, Prem Singh, who is the boxer that the lead character is based on here, along with Michael Pugliese, I'm not sure how you say his last name. They wrote the screenplay together. They started in 2010 trying to get this story told. And I guess they got it together after attaching Alistair Grierson to direct it. And what's interesting is Prem and Michael found where Mickey Rourke trained as far as his boxing, and they waited for him to leave the gym, and they pitched him the project, and he was interested enough to get attached to the project, and that's what they kind of used to sell it and get the funding for it. So it's always nice to hear little stories like that.
Oh yeah, and it's one of these films that, if you didn't have a Mickey Rourke, it's going to be one that's going to struggle to get that funding. It's an actor like that brings an audience to it. They can help get these things off the ground. But I expect that, as I said, I hope this is going to find an audience because it's a really, really interesting story.
Well, like I said, it looks like it's opening right now, November 2nd, 2018, okay. Limited release. I don't see any other information about release dates outside of the US or Canada. So hopefully it will be something that people find, though.
Mine's a comedy with Christian Bale in a fat suit. No, this is Adam McKay, as we all remember from the Big Short. You've got a director that had just built a reputation on comedy. All the work he had done with Will Ferrell and Anchorman, and delivered this unexpected drama looking at the whole financial crisis in the Big Short. Well, he's back now with Christian Bale as Dick Cheney in the movie Vice, which is the story of, Dick Cheney, who was, the powerful vice president. And the trailer, really hinges on, centers on Sam Rockwell as George W. Bush sitting down with Dick Cheney and talking about having him as his vice president. But we've got a huge cast. We've got, Steve Carell back, again, working with Adam McKay as Donald Rumsfeld. We've got Amy Adams. We have Eddie Marson. We've got Tyler Perry as Colin Powell. Just a huge cast. And to me, just a really interesting story. Again, I think McKay showed that he can handle serious subject matter in an entertaining way. So I'm really intrigued with what he's going to do with this one. It's not based on a book. He is the writer on this. He was the writer on Big Short, but he was working off of the book that had been all pulled together on this one. I'm not sure if he's just pulling from a lot of magazine articles or what the general thrust of the story is, but I'm intrigued to see what we get from him. This is coming out right around Christmas time, December 21st. So again, sort of right in that Oscar, contender sweet spot. And he pulled it off 3 years ago with The Big Short. So I'm really interested to see how this one comes together.
The Big Short was such a surprise of a film. And man, did I just, I feel like I learned a bunch about that while having a great time at the same time, and just being horrified. And that, I think, is something that McKay, who definitely comes from kind of the comedy side of things, has found a way to tap into in a really smart way, is taking these insane real world stories and infusing them with comedy to make it really incredibly palatable for an audience. I mean, that's kind of what he did with The Big Short. And it definitely looks like that's what he's doing here. I am just so excited about this one. I think Christian Bale looks amazing as Cheney, and as everybody does. Sam Rockwell as W just endlessly cracks me up. It's just fantastic to see him in there. So I don't know. I'm so excited that this is coming out. And this is another one that's like, I hadn't even heard that this was coming. And here it is. I'm like, oh, wow, look at this. This looks like to be an amazing film. I didn't even know it was happening. So,
yeah, you would think with a cast like this that you would have heard something. It was just like The Big Short came out of nowhere. This one is just, the trailer dropped and out of nowhere, with all of these people, you would have thought you would have heard that, this was starting production, but they kept it really quiet. And it's this nice, little pleasant surprise here in October of I think probably, a best picture contender. We will see. And interestingly enough, I was looking to see what else, Adam McKay was working on. And he has also announced that his next project is, or at least according to IMDb, is a movie called Bad Blood, which is similar. It's about the story of that biotech company that Elizabeth Holmes started, Theranos, which was about, all the blood testing and over the past several years about how that was revealed to be a complete, fraud and all the scandal that was involved in that. So that's his next one that's been announced with Jennifer Lawrence as Elizabeth Holmes. So it sounds like he's found his niche of tackling sort of like what the big headline stories are and creating a very entertaining look at sort of, I guess, controversial or scandalous, behavior by public officials. So.
Well,
Yeah.
interestingly, Miss Sloane, I think, fits nicely into that. That's
Oh,
another one
yes.
that has that same vibe, even though he wasn't involved.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a great way to kind of tackle these stories. And I think that they are really interesting. That one about Elizabeth Holmes sounds really interesting. So that's another one I'm going to have to check out. So cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've got some, like I said, it's trailers. It's going to be like picking your favorite children the next few weeks as we continue to have all these trailers drop. It's going to be tough to find the really good ones. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I guess it's that time. We got to dig into these crazy lists, huh?
As I said last week, why do we let the people decide? We need we need to decide these lists, not them. They stick us with these challenging things, but it's very rewarding to be pushed to explore different avenues.
That's one way to say it.
or just we have to be better about picking topics where it's like, oh well, there's 3 movies, there's maybe 1 movie in this category. Okay, so here we go. Yes. Well,
so as the people spoke and they chose of our options: police corruption movies, wrongful executions in movies, or fringe sexual behavior in movies. The people spoke and chose wrongful executions in movies. So that's where we landed because of the film The Detective that we're talking about on the main show this week. So, do you want to start this one off, or shall I?
Sure, I can start with this one because we'll see. This was a challenge because of the phrasing that we pick, and I think maybe we need to be less specific. But okay, how often are people executed in movies? And that's, to me, that's not just somebody getting killed. I struggle with this. Like, what does an execution mean? Then wrongful execution. So it's not somebody that should be executed. So there's somebody innocent or that's, in the wrong place at the wrong time or something. So I really struggled with this one. So I had to dig deep. A lot of online searching didn't help me as much as I had hoped. So I had to think about situations where people were, and I guess I sort of came along. I do have an execution here, but a lot of these are unintended deaths. But although it was not like, whoops, I accidentally killed you. There was some intent, but it may have somehow been misdirected. So my first pick, this is a really obscure movie that I have not seen in a long time. It may be difficult to track down. I'm sure you could probably rent it out there, but this was from 1989, I believe. This is Penn and Teller Get Killed. So this is a story of Penn and Teller, and there's all kinds of crazy hijinks that happen. But at one point, in the middle of a magic trick, Penn accidentally kills Teller. So he puts him in a situation where he is, in a life-threatening situation. Of course, Teller is supposed to escape, but he ends up getting killed. So it's probably the one where I'm stretching it the most, but you could say that he is executed on a public stage in front of, hundreds of people. It wasn't intended that way. So it was the wrongful execution of Teller in Penn and Teller Get Killed.
Oh, okay. I have not seen that. I don't think I've seen Penn and Teller in any movie.
Well, this is the one. I don't know if they've got little cameos in a lot of movies, but this was one that was an interesting point in their career. And I remember seeing this because Teller on stage does not talk at all, but he actually has lines in this. And the reason I watched this was I just graduated high school and I was a huge fan of Arthur Penn. Bonnie and Clyde, Little Big Man. So this was, I think, one of the last films he directed, and I thought it was an unusual subject matter for him to take on because usually he was dealing with like historical things. That's what that I always appreciated about, the films he did. So yeah, it was very unusual to see him take on something as contemporary as Penn and Teller get killed. So that's what drew me to watch this when I was working at the video store. A lot of people didn't enjoy it because it is a very, very odd film. I would be interested to revisit it to see how well it holds up. It feels very dated in 80s, but it did stick with me, in terms of the accidental killing of Teller.
I feel like, what was the Arthur Penn movie that I just watched? I am looking at his stuff. Night Moves. That's what I just watched.
Oh, okay.
Which was a real disappointment. I was like, yeah, that was pretty lame. Yeah, Penn and Teller Get Killed was one that the box cover always stood out to me, like on the shelves at Blockbuster, but I never watched it. I don't think I knew who those guys were at that time. It wasn't until probably, 5 years later that I knew who they were. So, well, my first one, this was such a hard one. I'm going with, I guess what I would say is, for me, probably the most obvious one. One, because it clearly is a story about a wrongful execution, and two, because Tom Hanks is in it. And you know me and Tom Hanks. It is, of course, The Green Mile, and it is the story of John Coffey, who is wrongfully convicted for killing these young girls. And although it seems like he did, based on the way things happened, but as we come to find out, somebody else had killed them, and he was actually trying to save them, but couldn't. But that doesn't stop everybody from wanting to kill him, because everybody thinks he really did do it. And the film, I guess I'm spoiling it right here. It's a wrongful execution. But, there's some issues I have with the film, and I think it stems from the way that Stephen King opted to write the book, where he wrote it as a serial format, where it was just 10 little books. So sometimes I feel like the film is a little episodic, but I still find it very powerful, and I think that there is a lot of strength with it. And Frank Darabont, I think, is an interesting director, especially when he's tackling Stephen King. So, but that's my first one. Michael Clarke Duncan as John Coffey in his big execution at the end of The Green Mile.
Yeah, you stole my one execution movie. Way to go.
Well, I had to get it out of the way. Actually, I do have another one that is a real fake execution. So I've got two.
Okay. Well, you took my number one pick there, because I was building up to that one, because it was my execution. And it could say, again, true wrongful execution. So no, I'm on board with that 100%. So I'll have two films. You can have four on this one. Well, between the two of us, we'll have six. I have no backups on this one at all.
Okay. So, all right. Well, we'll just keep plugging away and see where we land.
Okay. We'll see. All right. So for my next one, I have to think about, again, I wanted to stick with somebody, it had to come with intent. And so maybe because I was trending toward comedy, because for me, I had to think there's something darkly humorous about, or it can be, and I won't say, The Green Mile there's nothing comic about that. But often, when you've got something that's a wrongful execution, clearly there's a miscarriage of justice or something has gone wrong. And to me, that can delve into the areas of comedy. So that's where I started thinking. So I ended up with my second pick being Fish Called Wanda, because of when you have Michael Palin, who is attempting to kill the witness, and he ends up wrongfully executing all of her dogs. Which ultimately, after he kills the last dog, she dies of a heart attack. So mission accomplished. But when I thought about it, when do you have somebody that is, wrongfully dying? Well, these poor dogs were being wrongfully executed by Kent. So there we are. So that's my second pick. And that is the end of my list. I've got Penn and Teller, really funny. I've got Fish Called Wanda, and The Green Mile.
I almost feel like you could also say the fish themselves. Well, I guess that they're murdered.
They're just, that's flat out murder. He intended to kill them. He did not intend to kill those dogs. So for me, they were wrongfully executed. So, yes.
Okay. Yes. I like it. I like where you're going with that one.
Okay.
All right. For my next one, I am going with a film that I only saw fairly recently because I'm going through this Melissa McCarthy series. Speaking of lists and movies that you're watching, I'm watching all Melissa McCarthy movies, and one of them is this film, and she just has a tiny, tiny bit part. It is Alan Parker's 2003 film, The Life of David Gale.
Oh,
with the currently unspoken Kevin Spacey playing the lead. He is a professor and an activist against capital punishment, but he gets sentenced for killing an opponent of his, and played by, I believe it's Laura Linney. And Kate Winslet is a reporter. Oh, and he's put on death row. Kate Winslet's a reporter trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and is doing this story on him. And the fact that I'm putting it on this list, it's a spoilery list.
Yes.
Wrongful executions. You're
Yes.
kind of ruining the movie. But this is a wrongful execution, and I'm just going to spoil it here for everybody. He basically stages this whole thing to prove a point why capital punishment is wrong. I'm not going to go into the details. I'll let you explore that on your own. It's a pretty interesting film. It's not the greatest, but Alan Parker is an interesting director who's done such a variety of films, and I generally am pretty pleased with them. And this one I certainly enjoyed. It's an interesting film, great cast, and definitely wrongful execution. So that's my next pick.
Okay, that's one that I remember when it came out in theaters, of just all the names attached to this, and thinking this looks like, something that is going to be worth watching, but it's one that just, wasn't compelling enough to go see in theaters. So I thought, I'll catch it, on video at some point, and just never rose to the top of the list. But yeah, everything about this, Alan Parker, sometimes a little uneven, but I generally enjoy his films. And then just looking at the cast of just, Kate Winslet and Kevin Spacey and Laura Linney, this should be a solid film. So is it one that I should add to my list, Andy?
It's not a required film. I wouldn't say that. I think if it's one that you're curious about, it's worth checking out, because it's an interesting story, I found. But it's nothing that I remember it kind of coming and going in theaters, and it was one that seemed like it was intended to be a big, award-winning type of film, but it never quite hit that mark. And I felt that way watching it. I certainly think it's interesting, and it's worth a watch if you ever just have the time or feel like it, or you go, oh, hey, look, here it is. But I wouldn't put it at the top of your list, because, In the Name of the Father should still be sitting at the top of that list.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was actually looking at that one. I'm like, did they execute anybody in this one? I don't think so. But man, that'd be a great one.
That's the first one that came to my mind. I thought, oh, geez, I'm doing this with Andy. He's gonna throw In the Name of the Father in my face again and ask me if I've seen it. And I'm gonna hang my head in shame and say, no, I haven't gotten around to it yet.
That's right.
Okay.
And I bet Pete hasn't either.
No, of course not. All right. What else have you got?
Okay, so my last film, actually, as I looked at it, I realized I did end up picking three that I guess I would say are all wrongful executions. But I ended up having three to choose from for this last one. And I'm kind of torn with them, because they're all kind of wartime executions.
Okay.
And I'm like, it's kind of a wrongful execution, but according to war crime prosecutions, it's kind of okay. So anyway, I was kind of struggling on that one. The one I'm settling on, though, and it's tough because I haven't seen any of these in a long time, so I'm like, which is the one that has the most, the one I remember the most? And unfortunately, I don't remember any of them that well. But I'm going to go with Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. My recollection of this one is there's a Kirk Douglas's character, and I could be totally wrong on this, but my recollection is that there is something they're supposed to be doing, and he refuses to continue because it's basically suicide. Everybody is everyone's going to die. And so he has to, so some of his men get accused of cowardice and are court-martialed and are executed because of it. And Kirk Douglas is very upset about this. And I think he makes his enemy the one who leads the executions. I can't remember exactly. I just remember feeling it was really powerful and a really interesting film. And I probably should watch it again since I am now putting it on this list as a wrongful execution. But I think it fits.
Yeah, no, it has been a long time since I've seen it, but it was one that when I watched it, I thought, I can't believe I haven't seen this before, because it was a really solid film. And I think this fits very well on this list. Definitely.
Okay, well,
Yes,
good.
there we go.
And then I guess for the final one to fill in your missing gap, I'm gonna throw this movie in that
Okay.
I saw it when it came out in theaters in the late 80s. I remember liking it, but I've never gone back to it. But weirdly, it's always stuck in my head. Even though IMDb has it at the below the 6-star line, it's like 5.8.
Okay.
It is the film Old Gringo, directed by Luis Puenzo, with Jane Fonda, Gregory Peck, and Jimmy Smits. I don't know why this film has always stuck with me, but there are just moments in it that just like are burned into my brain. And one of them is watching the execution at the end when one of these characters is killed. And I going back and reading the plot synopsis of this film again, it's like I didn't even realize that Gregory Peck is playing Ambrose Bierce, the author. And I'm like, that's so weird. I had no recollection of that. So now I feel like I need to watch it again just to like put it all together. But it's like he's an old author and he's kind of joined the Mexican Revolution. And she's a school teacher down there who gets kind of caught up in this whole thing. And he is, Ambrose Bierce is in this place where he feels like he's done his work as a writer and he really just wants to die now, and he's kind of tired of living, and so he's trying to kind of get himself into situations where he ends up getting himself killed. I don't know, I just found like it was an interesting film. And Jimmy Smits is the I think he's the general who is kind of catches them both and deals with them both, but it's actually his execution later. And so it's an interesting little film that might be worth checking out.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Oh, so anyway, that's the last of the wrongful executions.
Okay. Well,
that's a tough list.
It was a very tough list. We need to go easy on ourselves for next week.
Well, funny that you say
what
that.
is it
So
gonna
Pete
be?
and I were chatting about this because we knew that you didn't watch this movie yet.
Of course not.
This is, of course, Danger Diabolic
Yes.
that we're going to be talking about next week. So I threw some ideas out to Pete. And so what we narrowed it down to are these options. The first option being, and this is, we're trying to make something that is not too broad, but is broad enough. It is comic book adaptations, but we
Okay.
feel like we need to cut Marvel and DC out of that
Okay.
mix.
Yeah.
Think that's fair?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
Yes.
The next one is Secret Lairs.
Ooh. Okay.
That could be kind of fun. And the last one, spy comedies.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I feel like that's kind of a fun set of options for us.
I think that works. There's spy comedies. Yeah, there's a good amount there. Yeah, that from what I've seen in discussions in Discord about the film, I think that will be a good representation of this film and give us some whichever category is selected. I think we can come up with some good lists there.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's it. So we're going to get that up in the Show Talk channel for everybody to vote on for next week's Saturday Matinee. And I guess that's it for this one, huh?
That's it. Yeah, this is a short one because, dang, that list was brutal.
It was a tough one. Well, thank you, all of our Patreon supporters. We really appreciate you and are glad that you are there backing us and helping us out. Keep things trucking. And we'll be back with next week's fun list from Danger Diabolic, and it should be a good time. So thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Hondo.